glitch in reality. For the last 2 weeks, I've been noticing strange things. Small, insignificant at first things I laughed off or mentioned in passing. A misplaced object here, a flicker of movement there. But now, I can't ignore them anymore. The world feels off, like a machine that's running just slightly out of sync. And I'm the only one who hears the grinding gears. I work from home as a freelancer. My schedule is strict, even though I don't have a boss. Every morning, at exactly 9 a.m., I step out onto my apartment balcony for a smoke. Rain or shine, weekday or weekend, it doesn't matter. And every morning, without fail, a man in a bright red beanie and a worn leather satchel stands at the bus stop below. He's always there, shifting from foot to foot, rubbing his hands together like he's cold even when it's hot. The strangest part, the moment I flick my lighter, he looks up. Every single time. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. Maybe he just heard the sound. But I tested it. My lighter is practically silent. I even tried waiting a minute before lighting up. Yet no matter what, at exactly 9:01, he looks up. His eyes lock onto mine. And for a split second, it feels like he's not just looking at me. He's seeing me. Like he's aware of me in a way that's more than just casual observation. It's unnerving, but I tell myself it's nothing. Just a quirk of timing, a trick of the mind. Odd, right? But it gets weirder. On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I hit the gym at 2 p.m. It's a small place, nothing fancy. The same people are always there, doing the same exercises. No new faces, no random drop-ins, just the same handful of people in the same spots, like they're following some script. Who has the luxury of hitting the gym at 2 p.m. every day? Shouldn't people be at work? I've tried striking up conversations with them, but they're distant. Polite, but uninterested, like they're just going through the motions. One day, I decided to skip the gym and go for a walk instead. When I passed by the gym's window, I glanced inside. The same people were there, doing the same exercises, as if nothing had changed, as if my absence didn't matter. And then there's the coffee house across the street. If I look outside at exactly 3:05 p.m., the manager and one of the waiters are always on a smoke break. The waiter waves his arms while talking. Always. Same motions, same timing, same everything. I've timed it. I've watched them for weeks. It's like clockwork. One day, I decided to test it. I went to the coffee house at 3:05 p.m., pretending to order a coffee. The waiter was outside, waving his arms, just like always. But when I asked the cashier about him, she looked confused. "Who?" she said. "We don't have a waiter who smokes." I pointed outside, but when I turned to look, the waiter was gone. The manager was alone, smoking in silence. Patterns. At first, I thought I was just noticing habits, but then I realized something disturbing. Every time I plan something in advance, whether it's a dinner reservation, a grocery run, or a quiet visit to a bookstore, the place is packed. Every single time. But when I go spontaneously, it's empty. Like the world is adjusting to me in real time. I tested it again and again. A restaurant I've been wanting to try. Fully booked if I call ahead. But if I walk in without a reservation, it's a ghost town. The staff acts like they've been waiting for me. Like my arrival was expected. It's weird. And then there's my neighbor Greg. Works a blue-collar job. He complains about money all the time. says he's broke, struggling to pay bills. And yet he just took his family on a 2-week vacation to the Bahamas. Drives a brand new SUV. His wife has designer clothes. No loans, no inheritance, just money from nowhere. I asked him about it once, casually over a beer. He shrugged it off. Got lucky, he said. But his eyes didn't meet mine. There was something off about the way he said it, like he was reciting a line from a script. None of it made sense, so I started searching online, and that's when I found others, people like me. People who noticed the glitches. One forum post stood out. It was buried under layers of encrypted links, like someone didn't want it to be found. The title, "They are not real." The post was simple. If you found this, you're either one of us or one of them. If you're one of us, listen closely. They are blind. They don't see like we do. They live as they're programmed to live. The moment you see the pattern, you're outside of it. And that makes you dangerous. Want proof? Break the pattern. I needed to know. So the next morning at 9 a.m., I stepped onto my balcony. The man in the red beanie was there, as always, shifting his weight, rubbing his hands, waiting. Instead of lighting my cigarette, I did something different. I picked up my lighter and threw it down towards him. "I know what you are," I yelled. And then something happened. He glitched. Like a bad video feed, his entire form flickered. His face twisted, mouth stretching unnaturally wide. His head jerked, snapping upward like a puppet yanked by invisible strings. And suddenly, everyone at the bus stop turned in unison, staring at me. Not just staring, grinning. I stumbled backward, slamming my balcony door shut. My heart was pounding. I expected them to rush into my building, to come after me. But nothing happened. Minutes passed, then hours. I finally worked up the nerve to peek outside. The man in the red beanie was gone. But another man, in the exact same spot, wearing a blue beanie, was now there. The cycle had reset. I barely slept that night. The paranoia was suffocating. Every sound in my apartment felt like a threat. Every shadow seemed to move. And then, at exactly 2:34 a.m., my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered. A whisper on the other end. "Don't trust them. Look for the ones who don't repeat." Click. I sat in the dark, clutching my phone, trying to breathe, and then a knock at my door, slow, deliberate. I crept to the peephole. Outside, in the dim hallway light, stood Greg, my neighbor, the one with the mystery money. His face was blank, his posture stiff. He called, voice flat. "Power's out. You got any candles?" I checked the light switch. My power was fine. "It's 2:30 in the morning, Greg. I just need a candle." I didn't move. My skin was crawling. "Come on," he said again. "Just open the door." I gripped the nearest thing I could find, a heavy kitchen knife. "Go home, Greg." Silence. Then, in the smallest whisper, "You're not supposed to notice." Something inside me snapped. I yanked open the door, shoving a lit candle toward him. The second the flame touched his skin, he flickered, just like the man in the red beanie. His form wavered like melting wax, before he let out an inhuman screech and bolted down the hall. I slammed the door shut. They weren't people. The next morning, Greg's wife knocked on my door. "Hey," she said, forcing a smile. "Have you seen Greg? He didn't come home last night." I looked into her eyes. She was real, a real person. And I realized something terrifying. The fakes weren't just pretending to be strangers. They were pretending to be us. and no one else noticed. Because no one else was looking, I've started seeing more of them. Everywhere. At the grocery store, on the subway, even in my own building. They're getting better at blending in. But I can spot the signs now. The way they move just a little too smoothly. The way their smiles don't quite reach their eyes. The way they repeat the same phrases, like they're reading from a script. I don't know what they are, or who created them, but I know this: I'm not alone. There are others like me. We've started finding each other in hidden corners of the internet, in dark alleys, in abandoned buildings. We're learning how to fight back, how to break the patterns. But it's getting harder. They're adapting, they're learning, and they know I'm watching. Last night, I saw the man in the red beanie again. He was standing at the bus stop, just like before. But this time, he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at my balcony, waiting. I didn't step outside, but I know he'll be there tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that, until I break the pattern again, or until they break me. The other side of the mirror. It started 3 days ago. A delay. A tiny, almost imperceptible lag that I would have missed if I hadn't been so tired that morning. I was brushing my teeth, half asleep, the rhythmic sound of the bristles against my teeth lulling me into a daze. I spat into the sink, wiped my mouth, and glanced up at the mirror. That's when I saw it. My reflection lowered its toothbrush just a fraction of a second too late. It was subtle, so subtle that I almost convinced myself I had imagined it. But deep down, I knew I hadn't. Something was wrong. The next morning, I paid closer attention. I stood in front of the mirror, staring into my own eyes, searching for any sign of what I had seen the day before. I raised my left hand slowly, deliberately. My reflection did the same, but for the briefest moment, before it matched my movement perfectly, there was a hesitation, a flicker of something wrong. It wasn't just a delay this time. It was as if my reflection was thinking, deciding whether to follow my lead. My heart raced, but I told myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me. After all, who would believe that their own reflection could act on its own? That was the last time I looked at myself without fear. By the second night, the delay had grown worse. I couldn't stop myself from testing it over and over again. Small movements, tilting my head, blinking, shifting my fingers. Each time, there was an unnatural lag. Half a second, maybe less, but enough to make my stomach twist. My reflection wasn't just hesitating anymore, it was resisting. It was as if it was learning, adapting, becoming more independent with every passing hour. I tried to rationalize it, to convince myself that it was just fatigue or stress, but the truth was undeniable. Something was inside the mirror, and it was no longer content to simply mimic me. And then, last night, I caught it doing something I didn't. I was leaving the bathroom, my mind racing with thoughts of what I had witnessed earlier. I turned off the light and pulled the door shut, just for a second, just before the darkness swallowed the mirror. I saw it. My reflection didn't turn away. It stood there, still watching me, its eyes locked on mine, even as I moved out of sight. My breath caught in my throat, and I slammed the door shut, my hands trembling. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined it, standing inside the glass, waiting for me to look again, waiting for its chance. And then, tonight, I should have left. I should have smashed the mirror and burned the house down if I had to. But I didn't. Instead, I tried one last experiment. I needed proof, something tangible to show that I wasn't losing my mind. I set up my phone to record the mirror while I sat with my back turned, my hands on my lap, completely still. A full minute passed. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of my own breathing. Then I picked up my phone, my hands shaking as I hit play. For the first 30 seconds, everything looked normal. My reflection sat motionless, just as I had. But then, at the 40-second mark, my reflection moved. It moved on its own. Not much, just a small shift, like it was getting ready to take a step forward, toward me. My blood ran cold. I dropped the phone, the screen cracking against the tile, but I didn't care. I couldn't breathe. I could feel it, watching me, smiling maybe, mocking me. It wasn't just a reflection anymore. It was something else, something alive. I don't know what happens now. The mirror is right behind me, and I can't look. I can't bring myself to turn around, but I can hear something, a faint creaking, like the weight of a foot pressing against the other side of the glass. It's not just watching anymore. It's trying to get out. It's trying to come through. The creaking grows louder, more deliberate. I can feel the air in the room shifting, growing colder. My reflection. No, the thing in the mirror is no longer content to stay trapped. It's waiting for me to turn around, to face it. But I can't. I won't, because I know what will happen if I do. It's not a reflection anymore. It's something darker, something hungry, and it's coming through. The creaking stops. The room falls silent. My heart pounds in my chest as I realize what that means. It's here, behind me. I can feel its presence, cold and heavy, pressing against my back. I want to run, to scream, to do anything, but I'm frozen in place. And then I hear it, a whisper, so faint it's almost inaudible but unmistakable. Turn around. I don't know if I have a choice anymore. The mirror is no longer a barrier. It's a doorway, and whatever was on the other side has crossed over. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. It helps the darkness spread. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next nightmare. And remember, don't listen to the whispers in the dark.